It's interesting that in rabbinic tradition, Yom Kippur is a dichotomy. You know, chefs talk about umami, one of our favorite experiences in life, whether we realize it at the time or not. That experience of everything just making sense to our tongue, to our senses. And for the rabbis, Yom Kippur is one of those experiences. You can imagine that in one part of the synagogue, somebody is wailing because they realize their faults in the last year, and somebody else is cheering themselves, saying, thank God I have this day. Thank God I get to start again. There's a Hasidic teaching about the man singing, sweeping the shul, the gabbai, right? He's in there, he's taking care of everything, the shamash of the shul, and he's sweeping it clean, and he's singing, and people are saying, why is he singing on Yom Kippur? He says, I get to clean. I get to start again. I get to wear white. I get to see myself in this light, in those eyes. I want to share a story with you, and I want to ask you to indulge in the discomfort that this story brings. Writer Auburn Sandstrom once told the story of a night at 2 a.m. when she was curled up in a fetal position on a filthy carpet, emaciated, anxious, desperate, in what she described as part of a 5-year-long anxiety attack. She was clutching a little folded piece of paper in her hand. It was something her mother had managed to give her, and her mother and she hadn't spoken in 5 years. On the paper was the phone number of a spiritual or religious counselor. Auburn's husband was out on the streets trying to secure more drugs for both of them. Her infant son was crying in the other room. And as she says, at age 29, she was failing at a lot of things. She was raised with everything. She had French lessons. She had singing lessons. She had parents who funded her college degree and refilled her checking account whenever she asked for a few $100. She had a master's degree from University of Michigan. She says, I decided that what I had to do with all that privilege of my good life was to destroy it, to rip it in half, to spit on it, and then set it on fire. That night at 2 a.m., absolutely desperate, Auburn dialed the number on that slip of paper, and she heard a man say at 2 a.m, hello? And she said, hi, I got this number from my mother. Do you think you could maybe talk to me? The man, sounding sleepy, snapped to attention and said, yes, what's going on? She told him she wasn't feeling good, that she was scared, that she had a drug problem. She said the man didn't judge her. He just listened with gentleness and kindness and said, that must hurt. And she spoke with him literally until the sun rose, until the panic passed, until she splashed water on her face and felt, as she says, I can probably do this day. As dawn broke, Auburn said to the man, aren't you supposed to be telling me some Bible verse or something? How long have you been a religious counselor? And the stranger on the phone said, Auburn, I'm afraid to tell you this. Please don't hang up. But the number that you called, wrong number. She never learned his name. She never talked to him again. She says that he shone a pinhole of light on her, and that was enough. She said, the next day I felt a kind of joy like I was shining. I had gotten to see that there was this random love in the universe, that some of it was unconditional, and that some of it was for me. I just want you to hear what she said again. I want to repeat it. She said, the next day I felt this kind of joy like I was shining. I had gotten to see that there was random love in the universe and that some of it was for me. Now, was she cured that night of all that ailed her? Without question, no. But was she healed? I think we sometimes struggle between the difference between curing and healing. I think we sometimes think they're the same. We get disappointed when we get not one and not the other. And sometimes we know what it is to have that little pinhole of light shine on us and to realize something about how we then exist, whether we call it healing or not. I want to ask you to think about those moments in your life. Ask you to think about a moment in your life when that kind of light, maybe in your darkest hour, has shone through and found you. Think about what happened in that encounter. Here was a woman desperate, like you and I have been desperate. This was 2 a.m. in her life, but it could have been any hour in any point of life for us. Because what we share with this woman, who we may or may not know, is our humanity. I want to ask you for a moment to think about how you felt hearing this story. Be honest with yourself, not with me. You have a mask. I won't be able to tell anyway who is speaking. Were you revolted? Were you disgusted? Were you appalled? Were you uplifted? Were you inspired? Were you comforted? Did her story resonate with you? Did it find the light in your story and join it and make something else, like a Havdalah candle, one flame? Or did you just see her darkness and say, thank God I don't live that? It's a legitimate feeling when we hear somebody else's struggle to say in our minds, thank you, God, this isn't mine. Don't we do that all the time? Good people do that all the time. We say, thank God it isn't mine, but sometimes we don't pick up the phone. I want to ask you what you would have done at 2 a.m. Again, don't raise your hand. Don't say A or B. Ask yourself deeply what you would have done. You had a choice, as he did, this stranger. You could have heard the phone ringing on the bedside table or in the next door and thought, it's 2 a.m., everybody that I know and love is safe, I don't need to pick up, and let it go. It's probably like I get everyday spam caller. But then what if you picked up the phone a second or a minute later when you heard this voice that you didn't recognize? You could have hung up legitimately and gone back to sleep and not worried about that other stranger who just shares the world with you, nothing else. Or you could have stayed on for 10 minutes and said, I'll do a mitzvah. I know what that word is. I'll stay on for a little and hear what her trouble is, but then I'll politely say, I'm sorry, but I think you got the wrong number. Why don't you call this number or that number or 911 and go back to sleep? But imagine what it takes in you or in me to spend the night with that stranger. Do you know what it feels like to hold another person's soul in your hands? I remember when both of my children were born and when one of my friend's children was born. When minutes after birth, or in my case with my own kids, seconds, I got to hold these little beings in my hands. And if you've ever had that experience or seen somebody have that experience, been next to it, you realize there's something that can't be contained in words about those awe-inspiring God moments. Those moments when creator and created merge, when you see light merging with light and life. And you have the privilege of holding that little being in your hands, like that stranger did that whole night till the dawn broke. In every age of our lives, we need to be held. We need space to be held for us. In every age of our lives, we need somebody to shine that light on us. But my question is, are we doing that as a society? Are we doing that as individuals? We're so busy. We're looking down and we're looking up, but are we looking here and seeing each other? We're realizing other people's troubles, and so often I think what we do to distance ourselves is we're having little conversations in our own heads of judgment. Wow, she's got problems. Wow, thank God I'm not her. Wow, fill in the blank. And distancing and judgment and distancing are synonymous. All they do is create space between light and light, life and life. And what we need to do is catch ourselves in these moments and ask ourselves, why did God place me in this place with that phone by my bedside table or that person in front of me? Why? Why now? Why me? And then just to make ourselves open. I don't imagine that man said very much through the course of the night. He didn't need to. She wasn't looking for someone to solve her problems. She was just wanting somebody to notice her, to hold her, to spend time with her, to let her know that she mattered. Have you felt what she felt, or does her story only resonate with a certain kind of person that maybe you don't associate with? Addiction, desperation, anxiety, despair, loss of self-respect. Or have you and I also experienced all of those individual human experiences? Depression, anxiety, loss of dignity, loss of self-respect, fear that there's no future. I'll tell you, one of the things that happened to me in the last almost 2 years, this pandemic, is I felt anxiety and depression, and sometimes even in moments loss of hope that I've had to correct in conversations with myself, and certainly fear for the future, and fear of living in uncertainty. And what it did for me is it gave me what in biblical or religious terms we call an epiphany. What's an epiphany? It's one of these aha moments when we say, that's what those people deal with all of their lives. I want to ask you to do something that's brave, but it'll be useful to other people around you, maybe to yourself as well. Raise a hand if someone in your family struggles with mental illness, anxiety, depression. Look around. Obsessive compulsive disorder, anxiety disorders, suicidal ideation, any of the many, hold your hands up again and look around. I didn't say everybody please rise, but it almost looks like that. What we're saying is, what we see is, this is what it is to be human. Addiction and depression and anxiety and all of those fragilities that are built into our design. And if you believe in God as a designer and a creator, then you believe that that perfect is whole and holy, that the broken is the whole and the holy. And then ask yourself what brokenness does if it doesn't give an access from one soul to the next. If we are too sewn up, too tightly wound, too perfectly sewn together, there's no way we can create access with each other. When you ask somebody, how are you, and all they ever tell you is, I'm fine, that can't be a relationship. It's not a friendship. It can't be love. We need to know what's behind I'm fine to realize what it is to be with each other. And to say, I feel safe because she's just like me. She is a human struggler, as I am a human struggler. I think about what the prophet Ezekiel says in the Bible when he says, God, place in me not a heart of stone, but a heart of flesh. Why? So that I can feel not only my own experience of life, but yours. Because God wants me in connection and contact with you. When the rabbis and the writers in philosophy and Judaism and in history talk about where God exists, they never point to the heavens. That's good for kids, because it says God isn't there or there or there. But what they're saying is realize that God is right here in the space between two people. Two ends of a telephone at 2 a.m. That's where God is. Sitting next to you, to the left and to the right and behind you. The person sitting alone, that's where God is. You, when you woke up this morning, that's where God is. A blessing that you said as you ate, that's where God is. Saying a prayer wholeheartedly, that's where God is. Realizing yourself as an integral part of a whole, a community, that's where God is. Stepping out of here and realizing that what happens here doesn't matter. What happens out there matters, that's where God is. That religion isn't in words and in prayer books, and it isn't even in prayer services. Religion is what we do when we get in our cars and we go home, and now we start to live the values that these pages pointed to. That's the wisdom. Otherwise, it's good language and poetry that somebody wrote in an irrelevant and ancient tongue. We have to open our hearts, turn them from hearts of stone to hearts of flesh. I remember in my early 20s, there have been a number of very influential women in my life, and one of them was the registrar at my small university in London. And I remember going into her office. I didn't know her very well. I'd just come out of the Air Force. Now I'm in this college. And I remember I always used to wear an ironed shirt and a tie. I was the only one who did. Everybody else was looking at me like, dude, what's up with you? And then after a while, I got rid of the tie and stopped ironing. But I remember this conversation with this woman, and she listened to my story, and she knew me for a while, and she said to me, Ron, I think you've built a beautiful brick wall all the way around yourself. And it works really well. It protects you. But maybe now it's time to start chipping away at the bricks. And at age 20 or 21, I had no idea what she was saying. It was another language. It was when somebody gives you advice, you say, it's not useful if I can't use it. What are you asking for me to do? But sometimes, like a slip of paper, we have to know when to pull it out, when to draw on it, when to realize its value. And when I realized that I could chip at those bricks was when I came here 25 years ago and when I met you. When I realized your life stories were just like mine. Fragmented, fragile, beautifully broken and human. And then I thought, oh, there's another brick I can let go of. I don't need to be that strong. Oh, there's another brick I need to let go of. I don't need that distance. Oh, there's another brick I can let go of. I don't need to be in judgment of another person's life because what I see is it's just like mine. Brick by brick by brick, over 25 years, I've had the privilege of being in the business of life and lives, and every day thinking about what it is to be in relationship with you, in relationship with me. We're in a relationship, a marriage with each other. We're in an unending marriage with ourselves. We wake up from birth to death, married, committed to one another and to ourselves. When we wake up in the morning and say, Modeh ani lefanecha, I thank you, God, for restoring my soul to me and myself. We look in the mirror and say, I am committed to you, your brokenness and your wholeness. I remember when I came from Italy, I brought Chaplain Jennifer a gift. It was a little piece of beautiful pottery that was beautiful pieces put together, and it had gold lines on the brokenness. And then she gave me a gift from the same pottery maker, and I use that for my espresso in the morning. It's a beautiful cup, and it has little gold lines where the broken pieces of the vessel are. So instead of hiding our brokenness, celebrate it, because all it does is draws us closer to one another. When you think about what it meant to live through a pandemic, and you think about this woman, Auburn Sandstrom's life, one thing we realize is if we have these epiphanies, then they're wasted if they just last a day or a week. Do you remember at 9/11, we had a commemoration the other day, 20 years after 9/11? Do you remember the wholeness, the synergy, what it meant to be one people in 9/12 and 13 and 14 and 15, and how that faded and faded and faded as we got farther and farther away from 9/11 and from each other? And what we found were more and more ways to realize our differences and not enough real ways to realize what God sees, which is our oneness and our wholeness and our desperate need to realize that we need each other and are desperate for each other. I think about that night and that man, that stranger, and I ask myself, what would I honestly do? Would I wake up, would I take the call, and would I stay on the call, or would I kindly say a few words, feel good about myself, and hang up? It's just a stranger. And a stranger, it's a nuisance. I remember when I was growing up, I had a job after about 13, 14. I had a deep voice, even then. And I had a job as a debt collector for a housewares company because I had a deep voice. And I'd call people and I'd say my name was Richard Miller, so if you ever got a call from Richard Miller, it was me. And we're asking you to please pay for your dish set. But in reality, I remember my boss there, who was an Englishman, and he had a plaque near or above or behind his desk that said, "A friend in need is a bloody nuisance." It's funny unless you're the friend in need. It's funny unless it becomes your ethos, your way of living life. What are we meant to be doing? What will make this year extraordinary and different and rich and enriching? What we get or what we give? What will it be? Will it be this or this? How will we use the instrument that God gave us? In a book called Love Poems to God, the poet Rilke wrote these beautiful words. Let me be the instrument of your grace. Let me be your will. Let me be your hands, your heart, your love in the world. God, let this be our prayer on this Yom Kippur. Let us be the instruments of your chen, as we say in Hebrew, your grace. Let us be your will, God. Let us be your hands. Let us be your heart. Let us be your love in the world. Gmar Chatima Tova.